So most of us live a lot of our lives on computers or some sort of FaceTime, right? We've got our phones, our computers, we've got our iPads, we've got our tablets, right? Like we've got all of those kind of things, and we interact with them regularly. And one of the things that's been developing over the last few years are memes, right? You know what a meme is? It's those pictures and words are put to it sometimes and caricatures of this, that, and the other kind of thing. I saw this one the other day and I just loved this one right there. Does that not express Friday right there? Oh my goodness, anticipating Friday. That is so good. We after a long week, we're looking for Friday, aren't we? Yeah, we're looking for a chance to maybe just put our feet up, maybe grab some sort of beverage of our choice and just kind of chill a little bit. But what I was realizing this week and recently was, in order to have like the true Friday experience, you need a Monday, a Tuesday, right, a Wednesday. Do you understand? My parents are retired. No clue what Friday's all about anymore. Not a one. Every day's Friday to them, right? They don't get it. They don't do it. But we need Friday, don't we? We need Friday. We're going to get back to that in just a minute. As we celebrate and enter into Easter season, we're there. We know it because we've got spring break and we've got a Mexico team heading down and we have Easter eggs happening. Now, the thing about Easter is I always feel like in some way like the sense of anticipation and wow, it's so amazing, is kind of gone, right? Spoiler alert. Like if you go to an Easter egg hunt, what do you think you're going to find? Come on, work with me. What are you going to find? Thank you. And what are you going to find in the Easter eggs? How about a Brussels sprout? Wouldn't that be great? Oh, I think Kim should do that. Just 2 or 3. And just, oh my goodness. No, of course, they're going to find chocolate. You're going to find Easter eggs. It's out. The secret's out. And we know Easter Sunday, right? Hey, what? The tomb's empty. Jesus is alive. And I think that's awesome. We sang a lot about it this morning. Absolutely fantastic. But it's kind of like the tension of that and sort of the ooh of that is a little bit off. Because we know this. We know this every year. Now, what I want to do, Steve's asked me to speak these next couple of weeks, and what I want us to do over these next couple of weeks is actually kind of step back from the tomb's empty, and it's Easter, right? And let's consider the few days that led up to that. And let's kind of dig into the plots and subplots and things that are taking place in and through that story. Because there's a lot that went on. A lot of things were happening. And in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in each one, you have big sections of the Gospel set aside for what's called the Passover week, right? When Jesus came in to the city. And so this morning, we're going to look at that a little bit. Now, what you need to understand about the Passover is it was a big deal. The Passover festival was huge. And what it was a remembering for the Israelites of how God, back in the day, right? Back in the day, had delivered them from the oppression, from slavery of the Egyptians. Big deal. Everyone's coming and gathering, and they are excited about it. But I think what we should do for the moment this morning is think a little bit about that. And recognize that this possibly could be a little bit of a bittersweet experience for this Jewish nation. Why? Well, because the very time of the Passover that we're looking at over the next couple of weeks when Jesus was here, what was going on in the nation of Israel? The Romans. They were in charge and large, shall we say. Right? They were there. And they were under their leadership and their rule. And it was no fun. And so you can only imagine that these men and women who were gathering together to celebrate, God, you're amazing. That was awesome. You delivered us. Woo! How about us today? Could we have just a little bit of love today? Could you show up and could you? Do you think? And so there's this bittersweet thing kind of going on. It's, woo, yes, thank you, but how about today? That's part of the story that we come to. Jerusalem was a big city, large. I've never been there. And I can tell you this week it was hopping. Like the markets were going, the inns and hotels, to capacity. Why? Because thousands and thousands of people were coming to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. I've seen movies, not been there. Narrow streets, right? Personal space, not this week, right? Like we're on top of each other. That's the kind of thing that was going on. Like it was just jammed packed. And what we know as well is that Jesus was coming. Jesus and his followers. They were going to be there. They're Jewish. This is what you come and you celebrate Passover. Well, what we also know is the chief priests, the Sanhedrin, right, the temple keepers, they were considering this is our chance. See, they didn't like Jesus. You've got that. They wanted to do away with him. He was messing with their system, messing with who they were. They didn't like him. So they're thinking, we got him. They're going to come. And so what the chief priests and the leaders there were doing was that they were actually giving orders to people. Listen, if you see Jesus and his followers, hey, get that intel to us. Like, we need to have this. I must admit, I sort of, when I was reading this and thinking about this, and like I said, I've never been there, but I've watched a few, Born Identity movies and some of these kind of shows where it's got these guys jumping from roof to roof and all of this, and they're spying out. And I can just picture these spies just kind of on the corner of the building, right? And they're just kind of peeking out over. You've seen this, right? And they've got their high-resolution binoculars. No. But they're there. And I'll bet you that's what they were doing. They wanted, what the chief priests wanted, what the Sanhedrin wanted, they wanted some of these people to spy. Listen, I need you to go. I need you to hang out. We got to keep track. Got to keep tab on him. We don't want to incite a riot right now. Like this could be trouble for us. There's a lot of people here. We don't want to incite a riot, but let's keep track of him. And when things kind of settle down, we're going to do it. We're going to figure this out. This is what's going on. This is what's taking place. Now, the chief priests, the Sanhedrin, temple keepers, they are anticipating Jesus coming. The Jewish men and women who are coming, they're thinking, hey, maybe this is the year. Jesus, seriously, just rise up, take the mantle of leadership, like we will give it to you. We will hail, King Jesus. And you can do this. Jesus, think about this. There's thousands of us here who aren't normally here. We can outnumber them. You stand up and you call the order. We've got this. This is our chance. Just like the chief priest. Can you imagine? They've got to be thinking that. This is prime opportunity. This is exactly what the chief priests and the Sanhedrin were afraid of. That there would be some form of riot, that these people would rise up and try to conquer. So there was a nervousness in the city. A little bit on edge, if you like. No doubt a festive spirit, for sure. But it was tense. Jesus arrives and enters in through the gate, and all of a sudden there's this flash mob. Like it's all of a sudden just boom, this thing happens, right? People are ripping off branches and throwing them down, taking their coats off and laying them down for Jesus that he might have this triumphal entry. It's just kind of like just boom, this thing just happens out of nowhere. Made for social media event, right? He's there. And we see in John it talks about how they cried out, Hosanna. Hosanna, which means save us. Like, save us now, Jesus. No, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is he who comes with the authority of God, is what that was all about. Like, come on, you've got it, Jesus. We can do this. The King of Israel, they shouted. They were ready to take this on. You likely know the story, these men and women who threw things down and picked them up. Jesus went on and was doing his things. He was hanging out with his disciples a little bit. And what we discover a little bit later on is there's a character in the story. And I mean, if you've got a boy coming along, I don't think you're going to choose this name. Do you know who I'm talking about? Yeah, Judas. All of a sudden, Judas sort of answers the call from the chief priests and the rulers, the religious group. And he sells Jesus out. He says, listen, I'll deliver him to you. I know him. He trusts me. And so for 30 pieces of silver, which wasn't chump change, it was a good amount of money, Judas betrays his friend. The man he had spent so many days and nights with had seen him do so many amazing things. And he turned on him. So Judas tells the chief priest, hey, we can get him in the garden. So let's get him in the garden. We'll make sure he's there. So Jesus is there with his disciples. And all of a sudden, this army shows up. Like all of these fighting men. And it's in the middle of the night. And it's just, Jesus is like, what? You know, why now? Why with all of these people? This is not me. I don't plan on fighting you. You see, there was confusion regularly on what Jesus was coming to do. The Sanhedrin certainly didn't understand. The religious leaders didn't understand what Jesus was all about. Jesus' followers were certainly confused. I mean, many of them were starting to flee. They were seeing the opposition. They were seeing the struggle. They were watching their leader be hauled away. And they were confused. Pilate certainly was perplexed. He's wondering, why are you bringing this Jew before me? That's not my responsibility. You guys deal with him. It's like, what is this all about? He was perplexed. And we know the story. It flows out, and Jesus was sentenced to death. He was falsely charged. He was blackmailed, and he was exchanged for an insurrectionist. We get that. And we know that the soldiers then, they mocked, they jeered, they spit on him, they punched him, the crowd joined in with all of that. The criminals ridiculed him. It was quite a deal. But you know, I want you to know that not everybody fled. Not everybody headed out. Simon didn't. Simon was there, and we're reminded that Simon carried Jesus' cross for him. John didn't flee either. John hung in there. As a matter of fact, when Jesus was on the cross, do you remember? He looked down at John and he said, hey, John, could you take care of my mom for me, please? And of course, ladies, we say it all the time, you're amazing. They were there, right? They were there for Jesus. You see, if we just do Easter, like if we just do Easter Sunday, we're missing it. You see, without the storyline, without the days prior, without Friday, Easter is just another Sunday. You see, Jesus in this story that we follow, and I hope you'll take some time to read it over this season. Jesus was choosing to personally follow his Father, to trust his Father. I'm always challenged by the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is actually just before he was arrested, just before Judas betrayed him. Jesus took Peter and the two brothers, James and John, with him. They were very close to Jesus. And he went to pray because he was messed up, like Jesus was messed up. I mean, this was hard on him. And he says to them, this is Matthew 26, verse 36, sit here while I go over there and pray. He's talking to these three. Hey, you guys, just right here, I got to go pray. Verse 38 says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, my Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will. Let that sink in. Let it sink in. He was overwhelmed. He goes back to his disciples, his Trinity, his people right there with him through thick and thin, and they're asleep. Couldn't you watch? Couldn't you hang with me? Just for this hour, he goes away and he says it again to the Father. Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away from me unless I drink it, may your will be done. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. It was an excruciating time for Jesus. Anticipation, knowing what was coming, his death. Jesus willingly giving up his life for others. And not just for others, but enemies. Right? Like the crowd, Pilate, the chief priests, the soldiers who just beat the tar out of him. And maybe more painful, those who said, I'm going to be with you to the end, and who kind of didn't quite make it. Like he knew all of that. He saw it all, and yet he kept going. And he kept moving. And you see, the confusion that we can see and we can read and we can understand in the story, as we recognize that not everyone's getting this. I mean, on both sides of the ledger, if you like. Like, we're not really tracking here. That confusion, I mean, I think that's legit. I get it. Paul put it this way in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18. I think it's powerful few words. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18, he said, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. The message of the cross, the story of it, what is behind it, what Jesus is doing is craziness to most. And yet it's the power of God for those who are being saved. Listen, Easter is awesome. And we need Easter. But boy, do we need Friday. Hey? The message of the cross, salvation for all, freedom from the hang-ups, from the things that have happened in our past, those things that are blocking us, they're just creating a stumbling block. They're just kind of tying us down. Forgiveness, hope, a deep hope that will take us through the dark, difficult days. The message of the cross, that it was on him for you. It was on Jesus for you. It was on him for me. It was on Jesus for me. That it's done. The work is done. The work doesn't have to be done. It's already been done, and it's been done by Jesus and not by you. It's this crazy gift that he extends to you and he extends to me. And it's confusing. And part of the reason for that is that we're shaped by our upbringing, the country, the era, the time of life that we've been raised in, whether we were raised with money or not. What era it was that we were raised in, whether we were Jew, Roman, religious, non-religious. You see, all of those things, all of our upbringing cause us to react and interact and sort of process what we see in all of life. And you see, what I see scripted through the storyline of the Passover is not how I would have scripted it. It's just not the way I would have drawn it up. How about you? I mean, I like it that, that Jesus offers that to me, but if you'd have asked me how to win the day, that's not our way. And yet it's the power of God for those of us who are being saved. I mean, it's confusing to us because we're the kind of folks that we're here on, we're here today and we're, celebrating. I mean, we were clapping and yeah, it was great, right? It was fantastic. But you might be shaking your fist in a different way tomorrow, right? And you might be raising your voice in a different way tomorrow. Like we worship and then we don't. And we're in and then all of a sudden we're kind of out and we're worshiping, we're jeering, we're mocking, we're following, then we're fleeing. We have missteps. We believe, then we're confused. We declare, then we deny. And Jesus knew all of that. And yet he continued to go through and push right through to the end. Not for my will, God, but for your will be done, he said. See, I think the storyline of this week is just so incredibly powerful, and I find that it affects and challenges me in all areas of my life. And I hope it does for you as well. It didn't dissuade or didn't deter Jesus that he knew that the people were going to be in and they were going to be out and they were going to struggle and they were going to trip. And we get that, don't we? Don't we get that? Don't we have close people? Spouses maybe, co-workers, moms, dads, children. But some moments, we are tight. And a few moments later, there's a little jeering. Hopefully there's no spitting. But you know what I mean. There's some tension there. There's some conflict there. There's some people moving away. It's a challenge. It's hard. But we feel like if we don't fight for ourselves, who will? Someone's got to stand up for me. Can't always be the doormat. I need to defend my turf, my name. I got to set the record straight at work. Seriously, is my name on the end of that document? I was a big part of that. Who's getting all the promotion for that? Like, I was there. See, the message, the storyline of the cross, the power of it, is what Jesus had to say in Matthew chapter 16, verse 25, and he said that whoever loses their life for me will find it. It's the message and the storyline of the cross. You look at 1 Peter chapter 1. No, I did it again. It's 1 Peter chapter 2, okay? Verses 21 down to the end of the chapter. It says there, to this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. And when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, this is where it turns. He entrusted himself to him who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross so that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed, for you were like sheep going astray. But now you have returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. I find those words so challenging. When I was a kid in elementary school, Mom and Dad would go to the parent-teacher conferences, and apparently the nickname that all the teachers gave me was I was like the class lawyer. I wanted justice! No one was going to be mistreated on my watch. Defending myself and everybody. Man, there's a lot of stress to that, I gotta say. But I always felt like I had to have my way heard. Like I gotta make sure that she understands or he understood what I did and what I didn't do and what I said. And Jesus goes, I'm okay. God's got me. My Father in heaven, He's got this. See, as the events of this story tell us, the things of the kingdom of God are in conflict and in opposition with us, with you, with me, with the way of our culture. I mean, if you like, instead of, sort of this power over, it's a power under. It's kind of like this down is the new up kind of thing, like he's just turning things on its head. He's scripting it in a way. And folks, the other way doesn't work. Our world has tried this for centuries. Jesus' way has the ability to transform a life. Jesus' way has the ability to transform a marriage, a parent-daughter, a workplace, a neighborhood. Like that has the ability to completely, radically change things. It's the power of God. It's the message of the cross. It's the story. Do you see how things can change? I mean, God's got you. Jesus is for you. I mean, Easter Sunday is awesome. It's going to be great. Looking forward to having you here. But listen, Easter Sunday it's not Easter Sunday without Friday. Thank God for Friday. And for what Jesus did. And what He offers us. Jesus went to the cross for you. For me, and for His Father. And this morning what I'm asking is, would you be willing to pray with me this Easter season? This prayer. Jesus, empower me to live for the glory of God and the good of others. That's the message of the cross. Living for our Father's glory and for the good of others. Entrusting ourselves to our God who's got us. He's got us. Forgives us, frees us, redeems us, that we could go and live in that and offer that to all we come across.